Hello everyone and welcome back to the Fight Game podcast. My name is Tommy, aka Tommy Reed Coach, and I'm very glad to have you back. The more astute members of the audience, people who are on the mailing list, which by the way is going to be linked below, if you want to be the first person to know about new episodes, guests and offers and discounts coming up on coaching, hit that link, sign up for the mailing list. If you're on that mailing list, you will know that I teased a very exciting guest for this week. So you might be confused, why am I sitting here on my own? So after recording the entire podcast yesterday with a fantastic guest, it didn't record, the file was corrupted and is unusable. So my sincerest apologies to that guest and to you. I'm sure at some point we're going to reschedule. We're already talking about getting him back on. It was a great conversation and I'm looking forward to rehashing it and letting you guys in this time. So other than that, thank you very much for the support on episode 1. It really was amazing. It's got way more views and plays and hours played through than I was expecting. So I'm really hoping we can build on that over the next few weeks because I've got 3 podcasts scheduled for this week, not including this one. This will be a solo ep, and in the next 3 weeks, we do have guests coming on. So solo ep, we're going to be going over boxing news and notes, MMA, big fights have been announced. So let's get into them. For starters, we have had the undercard announced for Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Makhmudov. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to read you out the undercard, and you can stop me when you know 2 fighters who are fighting each other. Elliot Whale versus Tom Hill. Hector Lozano versus Sultan Al Mohammed. Felix Cash versus Liam O'Hare. Mikey Talon versus Christopher Rios. Brian Gorham versus Edouard Georgiev. Troy Williamson versus Simon Zackenhuber. Fraser Clark versus Justice Honey. Some of you might have just said pause. Jamie TKV versus Richard Riakporhe. I'm assuming a lot of you have just paused. Conor Benn versus Regis Prograis, the $15 million fight. Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Makhmudov. There is a good chance, if you're listening to this podcast, that you didn't stop me once because you do not know 2 people who are fighting each other on this card. This is because this might be one of the worst cards ever to be assembled for a stadium show. Now, the main card, Fraser Clark, Justice Honey. Good fight. Don't understand the booking for this card. Jamie TKV versus Richard Riakporhe. Actually a good fight. I am excited for that one. Doesn't hold any name value for being the 3rd fight down from the main event. Conor Benn versus Regis Prograis. We're going to get into this, but everyone's been talking about this for years, haven't they? It feels like it anyway. Main event's terrible. That's not worth talking about. So the undercard, the prelims, there's really good fighters on here, and there's fighters who I'm glad are getting the opportunity. Fighters like Elliot Whale opening the card. Elliot Whale jumped on the Box Raw Sparring Club when they were in London, before what would have been the Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. second fight. So I'm assuming he's got this opportunity because of that. That's really cool. I'm a big fan of that. I don't know who he's fighting. I don't know who Tom Hill is. Maybe I'll do a little bit of research and try and find out who any of these guys are. Troy Williamson is not having the rematch with Callum Simpson. That is an interesting one. Also, Troy Williamson is a Matchroom fighter, as far as I know. I would not have expected Matchroom fighters to have been on this card where Conor Benn is making his debut for Zuffa Boxing. It's not for Zuffa Boxing, it's for Turkey. But that's neither here nor there. I also thought Justice Honey was a Matchroom boxer as well, but maybe they dropped him after he got knocked out. But anyway, that is the card. It's included in your price of Netflix. All of us have Netflix, I'm assuming. It's not technically a pay-per-view, but for me, it's very underwhelming. When you see a main event that is as weak as Tyson Fury versus Makhmudov, you expect a big undercard. This is just my opinion. This is speculation. I do not believe that Conor Benn's $15 million fight was supposed to be on Tyson Fury's undercard. I would have to assume they realized no one watched the press conference, no one's looking at the social media posts, nobody is following the ticket link, nobody's buying tickets. We need to beef this card up. And they obviously didn't think that Jamie TKV versus Richard Riakporhe was going to be the fight to do it. So in comes Conor Benn for his £15 million super fight. They described it as this will be a one-off super fight against Regis Prograis. So that one's not quite doing it for me. Jamie TKV versus Richard Riakporhe will be a very good fight. That would probably have headlined a show on Sky. That's about it. Fraser Clarke versus Justice Honey. I don't understand this fight, to be honest. I like 50-50 matchups, and I don't think we ever need to be thinking of boxing as we only look at the guys who are winning fights. Like, I still want to see the guys who are losing fight each other. I want good fights, good 50-50 fights. But this one just doesn't really make sense to me. Justice Honey looking to come back after the loss to Fabio Wardley, of course. But when you look at what Fabio Wardley done to Fraser Clarke in their rematch, and then you look at the success that Justice Honey had against him, Fraser Clarke obviously has gone on to lose at British level to Jamie TKV. I would think Justice Honey is going to box the absolute nut off him and probably stop him. But yeah, so this card, am I going to watch it? Probably, just because I love boxing and I'm going to watch boxing if it's on and I'm not having to pay for it. Do I want to contribute to the viewing figures of this? No, not really, because I just think this is a very poor showing, and I'm not liking these very, very top-heavy fights and then a terrible main card. That's just not my cup of tea. I don't like that. I like a good main card and a good 50-50 fight at the top. I don't care about name value. Tyson Fury doesn't interest me. Conor Benn doesn't interest me. I'd much rather have a good undercard and then a good fight main event, which doesn't have too much name value. But anyway, enough of my opinion on that. What I want to talk to you guys about today is, coming off the back of that, is Turki Al-Sheikh's involvement in boxing and whether it is a positive or a negative. And for a long time, I thought it was a positive, but I always had my reservations. I thought, we're getting great fights, the fighters are getting paid lots of money, and all the promoters are working together for the first time in my lifetime. What's not to like? What's not to like is the monopolization of the sport, the UFC-ification of the sport. I hate the UFC model. I think it's fantastic for fighters getting to see great fights. Fans getting to see great fights. But I'm really not a big fan of the fighters hardly earning any money. I'm not a fan of them being held hostage and not being able to go and take other opportunities where they could be getting paid more. For example, fighting on MVP against Jake Paul, like an easy night's work for some of the fighters who are being offered it, and they're not allowed to go and do it because of their 50-50 contract they're on with the UFC. I don't want to see that happen to boxing. And the dangerous thing is, and people say, but the fighters are getting paid really well, which is true. The fighters are getting paid really well at the top of the sport. How does it factor through when these fighters who are lower down on the card are pushing their way up? Are they going to be getting similar money to what the fighters who are currently on top are getting? Or are they going to get there, look to their left and right and say, where's all this money that was at the top of the card when I was opening it? When the Tyson Furies, the Usyks, the Conor Benns, when they stop boxing, when we lose this current generation of superstars, are there going to be more superstars? Because Turki isn't building them. He's simply capitalizing on the ones who already have a big name. Your Eddie Hearns, your Oscar De La Hoyas, even Frank Warren, they build up the superstars. They get them to the world title fights. Turki hasn't been doing that. And I think now, having cut ties essentially with Frank, Eddie, I mean, he's never got on well with Oscar. Who's going to build these superstars? And do we see a situation where without the superstars, Turki just gets bored and decides to knock it on the head and go and invest in water polo or something instead. So Conor Benn, 15 million. I think we can all agree they're not going to see a massive return on investment in that unless this was purely an advertisement, which is what I believe it was. I don't think they ever thought Conor Benn was going to sell £15 million worth of tickets, pay-per-views, whatever, fighting Regis Prograis. To be honest, I don't think he would sell that fighting anyone in the world except Chris Eubank Jr. So what I think is they've made the calculated decision to use this as an advertising, as a marketing tool to get Conor Benn as their billboard for Zuffa boxing. And they've stuck him on Tyson Fury's undercard to help sell some tickets, but they want to see a return on that 15 million in the long run from the eyes that have been put on their company by taking Conor Benn from Matchroom. Conor Benn's future is very uncertain. I would have to imagine from now on he's going to be signing one-fight deals with Turkey to fight on Netflix. That seems to be the way the sport is going now. Tyson Fury isn't signed with a promoter. He is just working with Turki Al-Sheikh to headline shows on Netflix. I think Conor Benn will go the same direction. Whether he re-signs with Zuffa, I doubt it, although it's basically signing with Turkey is the same thing. He will not be fighting at the Apex. He is going to be fighting in stadiums or arenas in the US live on Netflix. And that is where they'll get the return on investment for Turkey and the return on investment for Zuffa from this initial purchase, if you like, of Conor Benn, where it's a £15 million investment into marketing. Conor Benn, I was very, very shocked when Conor Benn left Eddie Hearn. Now, this almost feels like old news. It was like a week ago, but it feels like it happened such a long time ago. Very short breakdown from me. Do fighters owe their promoters anything? In a sense, I have always argued no. I would say that fighters are only in there to look after themselves. They've got a very short window to maximize earnings. They've got a very short window to take control of their career and make as much money as possible. Whereas once that fighter retires or is forced to retire through injury or anything can happen in the boxing game, the promoter that train keeps rolling. Matchroom isn't going anywhere. When Conor Benn hangs them up, Matchroom will still be there and they will still be turning over millions of pounds. So why was the boxing world in such uproar when Conor Benn left Eddie Hearn? It's because Eddie Hearn fought tooth and nail to prove that Conor Benn was innocent after he got popped for PEDs. Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, the Hearn family loaned him hundreds of thousands of pounds during that period where he wasn't fighting, so he wasn't getting paid. He had mortgages to pay. He had, I'm sure, all sorts of bills to pay. And they openly loaned him that money. They then brought him back from that precipice. He's spoken about being in such a bad place, he was contemplating suicide. And then they've sold out Tottenham Hotspur Stadium back to back and given him generational wealth. And then he goes and signs a one-fight deal with their biggest competitor who's looking to break into the market. This is why people were so almost offended by this, or offended on behalf of Matchroom. And I actually feel like putting Conor Benn on the Tyson Fury card could backfire on Turkey because the British public, I think, is just fed up with the bloke. After the steroid accusations, after people despised him in the run-up to the first Eubank fight because of the weight cut issues for Eubank. And he seems to have come out the back end of that, having beaten Eubank, and now it's just put him straight back in. And I really do think like the British boxing fraternity is not happy about this. And it reflects very badly on Turki Al-Sheikh's intentions in the sport. Speaking of, Turki Al-Sheikh announced this week that Alexander Usyk is fighting Rico Verhoeven at the Pyramids of Giza in a boxing match for the WBC World Championship. Now, he made that announcement and then Maurizio Suleiman has come out and said, no, this isn't for the WBC World title. We're creating a special ceremonial belt for this fight. Now that's fine. I don't mind this fight. I actually think it's good fun. I think Alexander Usyk has seen Tyson Fury fight Ngannou, AJ's fought Ngannou and Jake Paul. Why shouldn't he get this big money fight? You know, if we look at the stats, like Rico Verhoeven has 2.3 million followers on Instagram. I've known of him for years. I didn't know he was that big of a star. I'm not sure where that demographic is, if it's coming from Europe or maybe America, from where he's been in a few films. But there is clearly a marketability to this fight. So will I watch it? 100%. I'm pretty up for it, to be honest. I would not have been up for it being for the WBC World Championship. World Championships are a sacred thing, and I don't believe you should just be given the opportunity to win one. Francis Ngannou nearly beat Tyson Fury for the World Championship. This isn't me saying Rico can't win and doesn't deserve to beat Usyk. But you don't deserve to be given a shot at the title off of one victory. No matter what you've done in previous sports, this is boxing, this is completely different. Anyone at heavyweight can get knocked out on a given night. Alexander Usyk could get knocked out on a given night by Rico Verhoeven. Does that mean he deserves to be the unified champion of the world? Absolutely not, in my opinion. So I think through the backlash that this being for the title generated, Maurizio Sulaiman, Turkey, have backed out of it being for the title. And now it's not. It's for a ceremonial belt. And in which case, crack on. I'm excited to watch it. I think I'm buzzing for Rico, as I say. I've known of him for years. I've seen all of his content with Tom Aspinall. I've watched some of his more recent fights. I'm buzzing for the geezer that he's earning what will undoubtedly be a career high. Leaving glory, 10 years undefeated as heavyweight champion, he is now fighting one of the greatest heavyweights in history. And you can argue, you can tell me Mike Tyson was better and all of these people. He is one of the best heavyweights in history, and they are both going to be earning a ridiculous amount of money to fight in an absolutely obscene place at the Pyramids of Giza. So where the title's not on the line, I think what's not to love? The only question is, what happens with the titles? Alexander Usyk would have been out of the ring for 10 months by the time he fights Rico. He's only been fighting once a year in recent memory. Does that mean we won't see him again in 2026? In which case, I'm sorry, but those belts have to be taken. And I love Alexander Usyk. I think the man is hilarious, and I've followed him since the start of the World Boxing Super Series at Cruiserweight. I think he's fantastic, but if you don't defend those belts, they should be taken off you. And he's got 3 of them, which is undoubtedly going to hold up the division. We've got fantastic fighters at heavyweight at the moment, and we've got very good young talent. But why would any of these fighters take big, risky fights or like major fights against other prospects if they've got no chance of winning a world title? Because they can't fight the champion, because he's fighting a kickboxer and not defending the titles. So in my opinion, if this fight's taking place and Usyk isn't going to be in the ring again in 2026, and really before the final quarter, I think he needs to be defending those belts by September. You know, we've got Dubois versus Fabio Wardley, which we'll come on to. That's taking place, I believe, in April. What does the winner of that do? Just sit around and wait? You know, we've got Caballero is fighting. We've got Moses Atalma is fighting this month. Who are these people going to fight afterwards? They can't all just keep fighting each other and the champion isn't fighting anyone. I believe he deserves this massive payday, but if we're not going to see him defend his title, it's time to give it up. Moving on to the world of MMA. Alex Pereira, speaking of vacating titles, Alex Pereira has vacated the light heavyweight championship. Alex Pereira also another potential opponent for Usyk at one point. That hasn't happened. What looks like is going to happen, and there's no confirmation on this, is Alex Pereira versus John Jones at the White House. I called this quite a while ago. I said, as soon as they were talking about Conor and all of this, I was like, it's not going to happen. Tom Aspinall being injured is a blessing in disguise for the UFC because it means John Jones will come back. We all know John Jones doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. The guy is scared shitless of fighting Tom Aspinall. Do you know who he will fight? Alex Pereira. And why is that? Because Alex Pereira is tailor-made for John Jones. He's a stand-up striker. We haven't seen any signs of good grappling from Alex Pereira, which is crazy because he's a 2-weight world champion and a 3-time world champion. But Jon Jones isn't the guy he used to be. Jon Jones isn't the guy who went on that run at light heavyweight at 21 years old. Is he even the guy who lost to Dominic Reyes? Is he even the guy who fought Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos? I don't believe he is. I think the Jon Jones that fought Stipe versus Alex Pereira at heavyweight is actually a very interesting fight. And it will be, I'm certain, for the vacant. I really, really want to say interim. I want to say interim and not vacant. But I'm so unsure in the morality and the meritocracy of the UFC at the moment that it would not surprise me if Tom Aspinall gets stripped of that belt and we see Jones versus Pereira at the White House for the Undisputed Championship. And I hope it doesn't. I'd hate to see that for Tom, but I can see it happening. And I think it would be a real shame if it does, because then if Jones wins, what happens? Realistically, Jones vacates that belt. He says he doesn't want to have more than one. He just wants to fight at the White House and then piss off again. So is he going to make everybody wait again? Is he going to fuck everybody around again? Who knows? Best case scenario, it's the interim championship. Alex Pereira knocks Jon Jones' spark out and then fights Tom Aspinall at the end of the year. All being well with Tom's surgery and his eyes. I think that fight is going to happen. It's being referred to as in talks at the moment. I just don't know what else the UFC could do. You know, we're looking at, Gaethje versus Topuria. Why do I want to watch Justin Gaethje get flatlined in 35 seconds by Topuria at the White House? I can see that. Put that on International Fight Week. We're talking about Conor McGregor versus Carlos Prates, which is flying around at the moment. I want to see Conor McGregor fight as much as the next guy. Carlos Prates would flatline him. I want to see Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. That's the only fight I'm interested in. It's the only fight I think that is winnable for McGregor. So give him that. I don't need to see him get knocked spark out. Put him in a winnable fight. There's going to be a scrap. It's going to be a striking battle, and put it on International Fight Week. I think it would have been good fun for the White House, but what I'm hearing is it's not happening. So completely burn that bridge. That's not happening. Stick him on International Fight Week, and let's have Jones versus Pereira for the interim championship. Alex Pereira potentially becoming the first free-weight world champion and setting up an undisputed title clash with Tom Aspinall at the back end of the year. Back to boxing, back to the good stuff. Fabio versus Dubois. Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois. We saw the press conference the other day. Daniel Dubois is, he's a big boy. He's been eating. He's been putting on some pounds. And, we're still pretty far out from the fight. I'm sure he's going to turn up in great shape. He's back with Don Charles now, which is interesting. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. Do I think Don Charles is a better coach than Tony Sims? No, I do not. Do I think he is a better coach for Daniel Dubois? I'm going to say yes, because I think he done a fantastic job with Daniel Dubois. Is he potentially going to be more submissive and more of a yes man to Daniel's dad, who through the media after the Usyk fight is being portrayed as a very controlling part of the team? I do think he'll be much more submissive to that than Tony Sims would be. Don Charles is a great coach, but he doesn't have many big named fighters anymore. Tony Sims has loads. Tony Sims doesn't need to bend over backwards to keep people in the gym. We are back. I have to apologize there. I'm not sure what happened. My whole server just crashed. So we were talking about Daniel Dubois going back to Don Charles. So my thoughts on it are, I do think it's a positive for Daniel Dubois to be back with Don Charles. I think Don Charles done such a good job with Daniel from the loss to Usyk the first time round, where I know he was with Don Charles at the time. But if you look at the rebuild that Daniel had from Jarrell Miller to Hrgovic, all the way through to the Usyk fight, again. Then it seemed to fall apart. I think Dubois is a funny one where we'll never actually know what the impact is of him having his dad so closely involved. We'll never know that. We'll never know if it's his fault, if it's Daniel's fault, if it's Don Charles's fault, whoever. But what we do know is he went from being a fighter who looked like he just lost it. He didn't have it between the ears anymore, to being a world champion and knocking out AJ at Wembley. And then in the Usyk fight, it looks like he'd almost reverted back to being that fighter who didn't quite have it between the ears anymore. But here's my theory on that, and here's why I think he is going to get flattened in this fight by Fabio Wardley. It's not because I think Fabio Wardley is a better fighter. It's because I think Daniel Dubois is very much a momentum fighter. If you look at, he was riding a good wave, but nothing crazy up until the first Usyk fight. And he fought Usyk like he had no self-belief at all. He then came back and fought Jarrell Miller. And in the Jarrell Miller fight, he didn't look great, but he gained a lot of confidence from that fight. He then fought Hrgović. That was a fight not a lot of people thought he would win. He didn't just win, he put a beating on Hrgović. And he sustained some early, not damage, but he was taking a lot of jabs. He looked like, you put a bit of pressure on Dubois, he breaks. That was the notion at the time. And he fought through some adversity in that fight. And he put a beating on Hrgović. Then came the AJ fight. And I, like a lot of people, thought AJ was going to steam through Dubois. I just thought we're looking at true world level here as opposed to fringe world level. And he proved me wrong. He walked to the ring like he was going to steam through a brick wall that night. I remember watching him walk out and thinking like, he means business tonight. And I think that was because he was coming off two very good victories. One where he hadn't looked great and he'd pulled victory from the jaws of defeat when he looked like he was going to collapse from exhaustion, but he carried on and he got through the fight. He then beat Hrgović, a very good, considered world level opponent for AJ or Fury, and he steamed through him. And now the AJ fight, he's gone into that with maximum confidence, and he showed it. The first round, he put AJ down. I think AJ never recovered after that first round, but he put him down hard. And that fight was very, very one-sided. There's no other way of looking at it. Although AJ had him wobbled, it was very one-sided. To then go into the Usyk fight, and I think he was very much up for that fight until he had Usyk in front of him. And once Usyk was back in front of him, it was like it brought him all the way back down to earth. And coming off the back of that fight, going straight in with Fabio, I think he's going to stay all the way back down on earth. And I don't think he'll really get going in this fight. I think Fabio stops him and Fabio stops him early. That's my early prediction. And we'll see. Maybe that prediction changes over time. But right now, that is my early prediction. Moving on, Lewis Crocker has pulled out of his mandatory defence against Liam Paro in Australia. It's important to note for this one that Matchroom did lose the purse bid. I don't know what the rules and regulations are around this. Will it go back to another purse bids if it goes over a certain amount of time? I'm not sure. But I do not think that Lewis Crocker or Matchroom had any interest in doing this fight anywhere other than the UK or Ireland, particularly Ireland. You'd have to think that Liam Paro is not best pleased about this. I haven't seen if they're going to be replacing Lewis Crocker. I wouldn't have thought so because this is his world title opportunity for Liam Paro in his hometown in Australia. You would think like we'll wait for the fight with Crocker. I'm sure something is going to come out here where there's going to be a workaround and Matchroom are going to stage this fight in Ireland. If it's not Paro, I could see them putting Lewis Crocker in with somebody else in Ireland instead. Another fight that got announced, Inoue versus Nakatani, Juto Nakatani. This is a fantastic fight and what we like to see, 55,000 in the Tokyo Dome. This is a Riyadh season card being put on by Turkey Al-Sheikh. And this is what I mean. Turkey puts on really good fights in really good venues. But what else is going to be on the card? We're not entirely sure yet. There's a couple of fights announced. I'm sure there's going to be 50% of the card at least, probably more, are going to be Japanese, which means not the best name value for the rest of the world because A lot of these fighters don't leave Japan. We don't get the opportunity to see them very often. And if you do want to watch them, it'll probably be on at about 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Moving on, Maxi Hughes is to step in to fight Pierce O'Leary as Mark Chamberlain is out injured in Dublin. Not this Saturday, next Saturday, March the 14th. Shout out Arnie Dawson going into the Lions Den. He is fighting Stephen Cairns on that card in Dublin. He's a local lad to me. I'm buzzing. He's going to win. It's going to be a decision. I'm going to guess. I would assume it's a 10-round fight. I am going to guess he's going to win it 7 rounds to 3. He might even put him down. Okay. Anyway, back to this one. Maxi Hughes is a much better fighter than Mark Chamberlain. If he is not coming off the couch, that's a hard fight for Pierce O'Leary. That's a good opportunity for Pierce O'Leary to get his name out there as well. Maxi Hughes is really well respected in the UK. He's really well known in the UK, and he can box. Like, we all know, he beat George Kambosos. George Kambosos was the undisputed champion of the world at one point, and Maxi Hughes beat him. He got robbed on the scorecards away from home. It's probably why Lewis Crocker doesn't want to go to Australia. But we're talking about a much bigger step up in class if Maxi has been training. He's coming off a very lackluster performance, which was a split decision loss. There was a whole thing around that. I believe his coach had a heart attack on the day of the fight, so that can't really be taken into consideration. His teammate Josh Warrington has just come out of camp. I would assume Maxi Hughes has been in the gym helping him get ready for that fight. So maybe he's fit and he's ready to go. I hope so, because if so, that is a really, really fun fight on the undercard of Jazza Dickens versus Anthony Kakachi. Final note, Jazza Dickens has been training for Anthony Kakachi in Dubai. Obviously, there's a whole world of problems going on with travel and everything. We're basically just fingers and toes crossed that Jazza Dickens is able to get back into the UK as soon as possible. I've not had any confirmation on this, whether he is back in the UK and out of Dubai, because that fight is fantastic. Kakachi versus Jazza Dickens in Dublin on Paddy's Day. If you don't know about this fight, get to know, basically. This is an unbelievable fight. This is the fights that we need away from Turki Al Sheikh. These are the 50-50 World Championship fights happening in Ireland and the UK. Domestic dust-ups. This is what we need. This is what boxing fans love. We can sink our teeth into this. We don't need huge name value. We just need great fighters putting on great fights and putting their world titles on the line in risky fights as well. So that is basically the roundup of everything that's happened in the last week of combat sports. I have a very exciting guest coming on tomorrow. I've got another one on Friday and potentially another 2 lined up for next week. So I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for listening to the Fight Game podcast. The links are in the description for my social media, but particularly the email list. If you want to be the first to know about new episodes, discounts, all that good stuff, hit that link, get yourself signed up, and I'll even send you over 10 completely free workouts to improve your boxing as well. See you in the next one, guys.